Greetings, fellow men. Servus Männer. This is Red Pill Germany again. And today I want to talk about the manosphere of the 17th century. As some of you might already have noticed, I have a little interest in history. So I had a closer look at the sources, and I want to show to you today that the MGTOW community, or the manosphere, has actually really old ancestors. The culture I'm referring to is, of course, the coffee house scene in London in the 17th century. And what I found here is actually what I see in the MGTOW community today. So let me just read you a little bit from an article I found. In 1712, the Starbucks site was occupied by Button's Coffee House. Inside, poets, playwrights, journalists and members of the public gathered around long wooden tables, drinking, thinking, writing and discussing literature into the night. Nailed to the wall, near where the Starbucks community notice board now stands, was the white marble head of a lion with wide open jaws. The public was invited to feed it with letters, limericks and stories. The best of the Lion's Digest were published in a weekly edition of Joseph Addison's Guardian newspaper, entitled The Roarings of the Lion. Every time you sip a cup of coffee in London, you are participating in a ritual that stretches back 360 years to a muddy churchyard in the heart of the city. London's first coffee house was opened by an eccentric Greek named Pascal Rosé in 1652. While a servant for a British Levant merchant in Smyrna, Rosé developed a taste for the exotic Turkish drink and decided to import it to London. People from all walks of life swarmed to his business to meet, greet, drink, think, write, gossip and jest, all fueled by coffee. By 1663 there were 82 coffee houses within the old Roman walls of the city. They arose from the ashes of the Great Fire and went on to survive Charles II's attempt to crush them in 1675. It concerned the king that for a measly 1-penny entrance fee anyone could discuss politics freely. The term coffee-house politician referred to someone who spent all day cultivating pious opinions about matters of high state and sharing them with anyone who'd listen. Although some coffee houses had female staff, no respectable woman would wish to be seen inside these premises, and the Women's Petition Against Coffee of 1674 bemoaned how the new-fangled, abominable, heathenish liquor called coffee had transformed their industrious, virile men into effeminate, babbling layabouts who idled away their time in coffee houses. So you see, these early coffee houses were places where men met, discussed, and were just hanging out for the better part of their day after work. And the women complained that the men were leaving them alone at home. And it is actually remarkable that already in the 17th century, women threw their men under the bus and collaborated with the government in order to exploit their men. The article goes on to say that coffee houses all followed the same formula, maximizing the interaction between customers and forging a creative, convivial environment. On entering, patrons would be engulfed in smoke, steam, and sweat, and assailed by cries of "What news have you?" or more formally, "Your servant, sir. What news from Tripoli?" So already in the 17th century, women tried to invade or destroy male spaces because they were in fear and terror of what might happen if men actually could talk unsupervised. Coffee houses brought people and ideas together. They inspired brilliant ideas and discoveries that would make Britain the envy of the world. The first stocks and shares were traded in Jonathan's Coffee House by the Royal Exchange. now a private members club. Merchants, ship captains, cartographers, and stockbrokers coalesced into Britain's insurance industry at Lloyd's on Lombard Street, and the coffee houses surrounding the Royal Society galvanized scientific breakthroughs. Isaac Newton once dissected a dolphin on the table of the Grecian coffee house. So I can totally recognize Vention MGTOW exploring the possibilities of Bitcoin in that. Think about it, back then stocks were a new thing. Now just to show you that female entitlement and the female hive mind and also basically feminism and all this campaigning, social justice warrior bullshit is really nothing new. I wanna read you now from the Women's Petition Against Coffee. Showeth that since 'tis reckoned amongst the glories of our native country to be a paradise for women, the fame in our apprehensions can consist in nothing more than the brisk activity of our men, who in former ages were justly esteemed the ablest performers in Christendom. But to our unspeakable grief, we find that of late a very sensible decay of that true old English vigour, our gallants being every way so Frenchified that they are become mere cock-sparrows, fluttering things that come on Zaza with a world of fury, but are not able to stand to it, and in the very first charge fall down flat before us. Never did men wear greater breeches, or carry less in them of any metal whatsoever. There was a glorious dispensation, 'twas surely in the golden age, when lusty lads of 700 or 800 years of old got sons and daughters, and we have read how a prince of Spain was forced to make a law that men should not repeat that grand kindness to their wives above 9 times a night. But alas, alas, those forward days are gone. The dull lubbers want a spur now rather than a bridle, being so far from dowing any works of supererogation, that we find them not capable of performing those devoirs which their duty and our expectations exact. See the shaming language? See the shaming language? They are Frenchified, see? They cannot stand, and they fall flat before them, meaning that they come home from a night of drinking and discussing and thinking that they wouldn't want to have sex anymore with their wives, or maybe they just got some hookers, I don't know. But this is basically a more flowery way of saying man up. So the women decry the state of their husbands, and then they explain why that is. The occasion of which insufferable disaster, after a furious enquiry and discussion of the point by the learned of the faculty, we can attribute to nothing more than the excessive use of that new-fangled, abominable, heathenish liquor called coffee, which rifling nature of her choicest treasures, and drying up the radical moisture as to eunuch our husbands, and cripple our more kind gallants, that they are become as impotent as age, and as unfruitful as those deserts whence that unhappy berry is said to be brought. The shaming continued, and now the women are actually going as far as stabbing their husbands into the back by selling them out to the government. At these houses meet all sorts of animals, whence follows the production of 1,000 monster opinions and absurdities. Yet for being dangerous to government, we dare to be their compurgators, as well knowing them to be too tame and too talkative to make any desperate politicians. For though they may now and then destroy a fleet, or kill 10,000 of the French, more than all the Confederates can do, yet this is still in their politic capacities, for by their personal valor they are scarce fit to be of the lifeguard to a cherry tree, and therefore, though they frequently have hot contests about most important subjects, as what color the Red Sea is of, whether the Great Turk be a Lutheran or a Calvinist, who Cain's father-in-law was, and so on. Yet they never fight about them with any other save our weapon, the tongue. So here women explicitly appeal to the government to ban those coffee houses because their men are not producing children with them anymore, and they will be weak soldiers for the empire. They go on to say that, wherefore the premises considered, and to the end that our just rights may be restored, and all the ancient privileges of our sex preserved inviolable, that our husbands may give us some other testimonial of their being men, besides their beards and wearing of empty pantaloons, that they no more run the hazard of being cuckolded by dildos, but returning to the good old strengthening liquors of our forefathers. We humbly pray that you, our trusty patrons, would improve your interest, that henceforth the drinking of coffee may on severe penalties be forbidden to all persons under the age of 60, and that instead thereof lusty nappy beer, cock ale, cordial canaries, restoring malagos, and back recruiting chocolate be recommended to general use throughout the utopian territories. 60 actually means 60 years. So they say that no man under 60 should be allowed to drink coffee. This is how crazy those women were back then, because they wanted their ancient privilege restored. Doesn't that sound familiar? The man actually wrote a response letter to this petition. Today it would be a response video, of course. I linked to it in the description, and I urge you to read it. It is really awesome. If you have a thing for history, or if you like this archaic language, you will probably just find this really amusing. So I hope this wasn't too boring or too long. This is a little bit of an experiment, but I just wanted to show that the desire in men to be away from their women, and that actually the effect of men being away from their women, being among themselves, actually it's not the coffee, I'm sure, that made them brilliant and creative and bold. No, I think it was the fact that there weren't any women around. When men are among themselves, awesome things happen. All this discovery, all these ideas, that was just unsupervised male interaction, basically. And the desire for that and the potential is much older than MGTOW or the manosphere now. I mean, we just, instead of going to coffee houses where no women would enter back then, now quite the opposite is true actually. I mean, now we're just using the internet, when in the 17th century a coffee house would work just fine. And what comes out of that, Barbarossa referred to as male entropy. This is what happens when men do no longer have to self-censor and no longer to walk on eggshells to please their stupid women. This is what happens if the rational male mind is allowed to roam freely. This is when innovation and discovery comes about. And this is actually how I like the MGTOW community and the manosphere to be. I don't want the stupid left and right infighting, and I don't like these accusations. I like a constructive, rational atmosphere where new ideas are being discussed and where bold statements are made and where we can discuss and treat each other in a civil, masculine way. So if you have any thoughts about that, please let me know in the comment section. That was it for today, and maybe you can read the source material for yourself and come up with your own musings and opinions about that. So, have a great day. Thanks for stopping by again. Servus, Kameraden.